So I'm Greg Petty. I'm the president of Ravenblack, and Darren Hodder, who works for us as a product manager, will also be presenting today. Darren is also leading our AI initiatives for the company. So although you'll probably have to hear a certain amount of me yakking today, Darren will hopefully give you some more technical detail. We're not going to really deep dive into AI. We're going to maybe provide a little bit of a sense for, particularly for people who know anything about AI, of what we're doing and how we're doing it. No secret sauce, just some of the obvious basics. And we're going to largely focus on how AI is improving and boosting our products and our technology, but also, oh, wonderful. How our technology, things we're already doing for humans, feed really nicely into AI and provide information and capability that AI wouldn't ordinarily, or AI tools wouldn't ordinarily have in the content server environment. We'll likely touch on Aviator, the OpenText product, a little as well, because what we do is different, but we believe complementary. So we'll talk about that a bit as well. With that, I'm going to initially, this isn't going to be a product presentation as such about our existing products, but inevitably, in order to describe how we use AI in our products and how our products support AI, have to have at least some basis. And some of you already have some of our products or one or other, but I am going to spend a little bit of time just giving you an overview of our basic products. And the first one, probably the biggest one, is something called the Application Analyzer. And the Application Analyzer is an alternative interface for Content Server. Yes, another one, but particularly designed for administrators, developers, and so on. So it provides kind of a more development-oriented kind of interface, as you can see. You can do all the normal things that you can in Classic and Smart View, and it's you can easily get to and from those other environments. Where it adds value is partly to do with the way that we can navigate around the system and we can follow links, but it's got all sorts of other embedded tools, particularly around web reports, where it's a full-scale IDE. And I won't say much more, because when we're talking about how we work with AI, some of those other functions and the things that we do with this tool will become more evident. I will also use this to show some of the other products. One product that is purely an overlay on existing Content Server Classic, we have this multi-agent scheduler. So it takes the existing web report scheduler, allows you to create additional agents, name them uniquely, and then as and when you want, you can pick one of these agents and you can assign web reports to different agents. Simply by double-clicking, we can move web reports, particularly if we're having performance issues or we have large web reports that are clogging up the queue. We can move them around. There's a lot of other subtler features in here and improvements to the interface, but basically that's the one thing it does. We can also do a lot of analysis and logs around all of this, and we'll get into that a little bit, because this product will allow you to really monitor what's going on with your scheduling and where the delays are and all that kind of thing. And so we're already doing some things that humans can use, and we'll talk a little bit about how we do that with AI. We also have, and here I'm going to use this tool just to look at some of the applications on this system, but we have a subtag suite, and this subtag suite introduces some 50-odd new subtags that you can deploy as you require. We have help online help and help files and a PDF document, lots of help available. But as I'll get into later, that's a lot of reading and all that functionality. As you can imagine, it might take time for you to even realize how much, what features you have and how they work, particularly as none of these were in any web reports training that you originally did. And our newest product is something called Dynamic Widgets. Dynamic Widgets is designed so that on SmartView, you can, without having to use the SDK, you can use web reports, but in a much more dynamic way, meaning there's a whole API full of functions that you can use within your code to manage all kinds of things on the page, hide, reveal widgets, change the content in widgets. It's just a whole slew of things. And with this, we have documentation in 3 different forms. The whole API is very well documented. I'll just show as an example here. All of the different functions and how to use them. Again, though, obviously we provide training, but you'll probably get a sense for where AI could be quite helpful with a lot of this technology we're providing. So we've got a lot of capability and a lot of features, and the difficulty both in terms of marketing and in terms of training is communicating and helping people to understand all the things they can do that they couldn't necessarily do before these products. We have a couple of other little bits and pieces, but these are the ones I'm going to focus on today from an AI point of view. So I think on that, before we bury you with more theory, let's try an example. So this is actually a different system with a few less apps, but we're going to pick one of these apps, so our Dynamic Widgets app. And I guess what we're talking about here quite early on is how AI can help us with some of the challenges we have. And I think most of this will be fairly obvious to anyone who's used AI. But what we have built into the application analyzer is this thing called Rave. It's kind of a contraction of Ravenblack and AI and all things. So we'll get into this a bit more. We have this product exists in its own chatbot without having to use it through the application analyzer. But in the context of the application analyzer, we have the ability to automatically to tell it, which knowledge bases to use, and to have it automatically pull contextual information about whatever we've selected in the analyzer. For now, I'm just going to do a little simple example of documentation, something like tell me about the set. So maybe you know about a function. You're looking at how to find a function that will do whatever you need. So we'll get a little bit into what we do and how we add value to AI and why this kind of contextual approach is good. But in here, as an example, it's obviously able to look at our documentation. It comes back, it explains how it works. And as you'll see later, it'll also, depending on what we're asking, when we start to ask it for full solutions, it will give us much more detailed information about what we can do and how to do it. Here it has a couple of examples. So that's a fairly trivial thing that can be applied to our subtags, our application analyzer. Another thing is if you're building apps and you're looking at stuff that is built on your system, this is where I'm already touching a little bit onto the contextual side of this. I might ask it what function in the response on this varies. Darren can talk about a little bit what we're, in terms of the pieces we're using and where they're hosted and how we're managing them. But the crux of all of this, the equivalent of Chat GPT, is the large language model. And what are we using for that, Darren?
We're using Google's Gemini, which is part of like the Google Vertex AI platform that they have. We tested this with a whole bunch of different models from different companies and stuff, and Google Vertex definitely came back with the kind of the most natural and the best answers that we could find. So that's what we went with.
Okay, so that was worth chatting because it did take a little bit of a long time for that, given that it's a relatively simple thing. So it has actually found from this app a particular web report that is likely candidate for a particular. So I'm trying to fix something. The analyzer itself actually has a lot of built-in features to do this kind of thing. But rather than this being redundant, it builds on the information we already generate and we already make available for humans to do this, but it can take it that one step further. And like a lot of these applications have a significant amount of content. This isn't a lot, but it's 216 web reports. So even with the tools we provide, working with large numbers of objects, AI has some obvious benefit there. And now I'm going to go back to these slides, and we'll maybe give a little, not too deep, but a little information on what we're doing. It's not this, well, actually, I'll let Darren speak to this. There's also a slide that talks about a very simple school example with doing school exercises. But do you want to have a brief overview of this diagram, Darren?
Yeah, for sure. So the actual chat flow and all the different pieces and like the logical steps that it goes through with every single time that you ask Rave a question, it's quite complex. So this is actually like the simplest I think we can explain it. But you think about search and just even searching documentation or searching, Google or something, you can get search results, and looking through documentation manually sometimes, that can be time consuming. But, this is not just search. So what we're doing is we're combining kind of the question that you as the user would have, and we take that, and then behind the scenes, we're loading. Oh yeah, no worries. Behind the scenes, we're loading on a lot of additional instructions. So basically what we're doing is you're asking the question, but Greg and I have been working with, web reports and customer solutions for like over 20 years. So it's not always the question you're asking, it's how to best present that question to an AI model. So we kind of start with the user question. We have lots and lots of instructions and expertise and knowledge and questions that go on behind the scenes to basically enhance that question to create a prompt. And I mean, this is not too different from how other types of, AI solutions work. We take that combined prompt and query. Then we have our own knowledge base that we've been curating and refining for a very long time. So this is like our collective knowledge of, not only our products and their documentation, but, code examples, troubleshooting tips, design considerations and design parameters for designing a web report or a dynamic widget, or, when it comes to analyzing something, we know the questions that are right, go to the heart of the problem with content server applications. So we have this huge knowledge base of all of these things beyond just documentation. So we look through that knowledge base to find the most relevant information. There's a whole bunch of adaptive scoring and different logic to go on to make sure we're finding the right chunks of information from our database. So we take the question, convert it into a prompt with lots of instructions, add into it all the top results from our curated knowledge base. And then it's taking all of that and passing it into the large language model. And then from there, it's going to follow the instructions. So is it going to answer your question? Is it going to, generate some new code for you? Is it going to prompt you with new ideas and follow-up questions? So there's a lot of different pieces here that go beyond just asking a question and hoping for the best. And even as Greg was showing, in some cases, we want very specific outcomes from our large language model. So we create buttons that have very clear instructions. But outside of that, when you're chatting, how you phrase your question and how you ask follow-up questions and everything, you're going to get very dynamic results. But that's where our expertise and time in fine-tuning this really come in handy, so that even though you might be getting slightly variance in terms of like suggestions or optimization suggestions, improvements, and so on, we know that the information it's drawing from is curated. It's been, stamped with our approval. We know it's going to be providing the best information that it can provide to you.
So I think I really want to emphasize that, because when we look at concerns around AI, and these were certainly our concerns, is the amount of what I think the term of art is hallucinations. Nonsense is a word that I sometimes use. But in a traditional, putting aside some of the things we're doing uniquely, the idea of this RAG, which is, Darren, if I get this right, retrieval augmented generation.
Yep.
All right, cool. First time. Typically, we're typing into a chatbot of some kind, goes out to ChatGPT, looks at the internet, and gets back maybe with something often valid and sometimes not. Part of this is that this scenario that's in the red here allows us to curate, provide information and rules and guidance around what we use and where it comes from, and particularly where we have our own documentation and our own knowledge. This particular approach allows us to do that. And then this very simple example, which might help with RAG, that is not mine. And I don't remember the website. It was someone who is talking about, she's doing math questions with her student. They use ChatGPT. It solves the problems, but it's not using the right approach as per the teacher's instructions. So with this kind of model, they have the class notes and some approved topics. That's put into a searchable data store. When they ask the question, while it's sending a query to ChatGPT, it also uses this searchable data store to look up from this information and add the guidance around and the specific notes around how that's to be used. And that's also passed to ChatGPT. So the response then is partly what ChatGPT can do and does best, but with the guidance of this extra information. And that's basically what we're doing.
And the nerd inside me, and I'm sure for you, Greg, the thing that blows my mind is that this RAG methodology, this is just one piece of our solution, but we have, like, in our knowledge base, the equivalent, well, I mean, it's literally like over 3,000 pages worth of information. And this RAG model is able to retrieve the right chunks out of those, out of this knowledge base in a matter of milliseconds. And behind the scenes, the prompt that we're sending, I mean, like, we were looking at this the other day. When you type in something like, how do I resize a widget? The actual prompt behind the scenes that we send, Greg and I were looking at it, and we copied and pasted the whole generated prompt just for that question, stuck it into a Word document, and it ended up being over 8 pages of text. Like, so the instructions that we're adding into each and every question is just astronomical in size, but it's also able to be processed just, within milliseconds, which is just mind-blowing.
Yep. Take another kind of example here. Again, we're going to look at dynamic widgets. And earlier, what I did was simply use it as a glorified documentation search. But where this gets more powerful, as we add the context of curated information about SmartView, web reports, content server, and JavaScript, along with our own documentation, then we can come up with, I just copied a question here earlier. This is actually a full, I want to build a SmartView application with a widget the user can blah, blah, blah. This is actually something we've built with our dynamic widgets product. So we feed in, and then we do a lot of this kind of testing where we're asking it to build solutions and then fine tuning the answers it's given. So in this case, again, I have no idea how long it will take. While we're waiting, I'll see if I have an example of the type of thing that we're trying to get it to build in the first place. So this is a sort of a hacked down version of something we built for a customer. So there's a filter thing with lots of purpose-built filters and so on. They wanted help available. This dynamically shows a help widget. If you search, it dynamically opens up another widget below. From here, if you want to view things, it can show you another widget to do that. We've got the GCI viewer integrated here. We can reduce that so they can look at the document. So it's all that kind of thing. So we're asking it to give us sort of instructions on building something like that. So it goes ahead and it's got sort of architectural stuff about, there'll be 3 widgets. It can have information about the perspective manager and actually adding the dynamic widgets into the perspective manager. Each widget inclined, it can generate code for the widgets along with the actual syntax that we use from our product that's embedded in here too. And it also then can produce guidance. And more of this, we can even go to the level of optimizing the code in the web reports using our expertise and knowledge in our training material. So that's still looking at how AI, some immediate things we can do with our technology, which is largely based around capability, where AI can really help us or help our customers to use this technology.
Mm-hmm.
So the describe this is I also want to show not just the obvious things that any customer with products like this can use, but what we do in terms of our technology and our companies, what we provide as a company. And so I'm going to go through a few things to kind of illustrate that. And the first part of this, possibly the simplest, is, as Darren was alluding earlier, our expertise. So we have a lot of information. We were both involved in building the original web reports courses, and for everyone's benefit, for anyone who doesn't know us, most or several of the members of our company were in the original Resonate company that built and invented web reports, and I was the founder of that company. So we bring that, and we obviously have our own products and documentation on all of that capability that you can use in your development. But we also have, multiple web reports training courses, new ones we've built, all of our expertise on content server. We were involved with the original SmartView team, and also curated knowledge, things that we're not necessarily expert on, but that we want to make sure there's no nonsense coming out of our version of AI. So that's one of the things AI right now, a lot of the information we are building into this is not available on the internet or in very small pieces. So all of the best practices and our knowledge of the architecture of web reports, we can recommend performance enhancements, all that kind of thing. It, in a sense, becomes like Greg and Darren in a bottle. All the stuff that we have brought to service engagements is not necessarily scalable. So that's a big part of it. Now, this is my simplistic, this is completely not how AI works, but a lot of what we're doing, I would say, is static knowledge. So we're giving the AI existing knowledge. It's there. It's nothing to do with any particular object on content server. It's just a general set of knowledge. But what I'm going to get into here and emphasize more in terms of the value we're bringing to AI is the fact that our tools are capable of generating and pulling large amounts of really unique information out of content server. And so when we have an analysis tool, as I'll show you, it can, for example, crawl applications, figuring out all of the linkage, generate documentation from them. It can identify issues in the development. And we're doing all of that with very rudimentary rules-based technology. But if we start to bring that data to AI, so in this example here, this dynamic information, our products like the application analyzer can draw all kinds of information out about individual products, individual objects, I should say, as well as all the relationships between multiple types of objects. Our multi-agent scheduler has specific measurement points in the scripts that run these schedules where we can capture all of the timings for everything that happened, and we can pull all of that. So with the integration with our tools, we're able to pull some obvious information that AI could probably get with a few REST calls. Also, a lot of unique information. Ultimately, then that leads to the ability, we'll talk about a little bit later, the ability, in fact, even to create objects and build things on content server. And that's where we're ultimately headed.
Greg, can I just add one
to
thing
give a
there?
sense in terms of, yeah.
So if you go back, one thing I just wanted to point out, and this is a key differentiator for us too, is that the knowledge base, the dynamic information, the static knowledge and everything, our AI models, we trained it and we're tuning it, but we've trained it. So one of the big differences with us is that we do not require any customer information, any data or information at a content server or anything to train our models. So when customers are using this engine, not a single part of customer information, customer documents, customer content, or metadata is being used to further train or refine Rave, which is something that again, from our experience, we know is absolutely crucial to customers. Is don't use customer data to improve your product. We don't need to, and we won't. And that's a key differentiator because most AI products require actual, large volumes of customer information from each customer to tune it to that customer's needs. Not the case here.
That's an important point. So looking through, and now this is a little bit looking at the way this RAG works, but first thing is all of this information we've talked about goes through a process where it gets added. So as we find documents, we validate them and we choose them and we update them or whatever we do, gets put through a process which ultimately makes it into a searchable database with chunks of information that have unique IDs. Darren, you can interrupt me at any time if any of this is my nonsense.
Nope, so good. So far, so.
Okay. So this is kind of just a normal everyday chat GPT type of scenario. You have some kind of a connection like a bot, and you ask a question. It goes out into the wild west of the internet and gives you a response. And again, sometimes very helpful, sometimes bizarre. The first part of the Rave model using this RAG kind of thing is we have the actual Rave client itself. This is without the application analyzer. There is a client that we may do some demos off of that. But in that world, at the very least, it can search for, based on the user query, it can search for information in our document database, and then add that on to add context and chunks of information to the uh, um, large language model. I quite often say learning model. And that's basically Rave using that RAG technology. Where we get into this a bit more, though, is now if we're actually going through the application analyzer, in addition to doing the same kind of thing where we search, we get back our what I was calling static information. The application analyzer actually has basically all of the things it can do, the AI can generate. So it can run audits, do various things, and get back information for whatever object is selected, and can include that with the request to the LLM. Similarly, with if we're looking at scheduling data, our RB Mass product, which is generating, and you can enable this and let it generate this data, that also can include all kinds of information. So you can ask questions about where are my main delays, or what would I change to reduce delays on my system, that kind of thing. So now go back in to do some more demo type stuff. So this is what I'm talking about. In this particular tool, when we select something, which I believe I selected the analyzer. Okay, there we go. We already provide a lot of contextual information, and what we're doing is providing information to make it easier for developers, administrators, and so on. So visually, we provide a lot of information, a lot of it's stuff that you couldn't get in one place. But we also have the ability to run audits. Here's an example. This one ideally won't return any issues, as it's one of our real apps. I'm not sure why Dev Sparrow has slowed down so much. I know, because I'm doing a demo.
It's always the way.
Actually, I'm going to pick another one anyway, because I want one that actually has some errors in it. Just make sure we haven't actually lost the... Okay, Sandbox app. This is kind of somewhat human language audit report, but basically it crawls all of the objects in the app, puts together all of the relationships between all of the web reports, and then identifies any problems it finds in there. So this, firstly, being able to look at and visualize these apps, as I'll show you in a minute, helps humans like ourselves when we're looking and trying to help customers to sort out all of the things on their system. On top of the ability to build those visualizations, we've already built audits, which are now using look at the data, look for problems, and write a message out to the user. No AI involved here, what I used to call RI, real intelligence. We've also provided the idea that you can go through the app, crawl the app, and ultimately build out all of the web reports on there, every treetop and every branch. So from here, you can actually dig down and visualize all of these things. But this is all also data we can provide to AI. And what we've also enabled as part of the product is the ability for any folder or app or whatever that you've selected to generate documentation. Given that everything else seems to have slowed down, I'm not sure how long this will take. So we can generate documentation based on containers, the web report trees, or both. So when we go into Rave, we pass some initial information about the object that we're inspecting, but we also allow Rave, we give a number of endpoints, and Rave is then able to request this, for example, this is all of the objects in this application or folder, along with all of the descriptions that have been logged against all of these objects. Now the AI has all of that information, and we can give it all of the content as well as required. So this enables the AI to do a tremendous amount of really useful things. And so if we go into this chat, and some of these options that we've got here, this may change a lot of this because it can detect where it is and what it's doing, um, purely based on what we've selected. We may end up with less controls rather than more. But we're also looking at different kinds of modes where, am I just wanting documentation, or do I want it to look at this entire thing that I've selected and give me all the knowledge that could possibly had for it? So part of what we do is curating buttons and things as well to kind of encourage you with the right sort of prompts to get the best information out. So I could click Analyze CS App, have it generate this question here, along with, again, as Darren pointed out, all the information it's adding in the background and the endpoints, so it can make a request looking for manifest files, documentation, web report trees, all of that can be used. And with all that information, you can ask it a tremendous amount of useful questions, things about how the application works. And if you're looking for a problem, you're trying to figure out where the problem is. From our point of view, prior to really using AI, we keep adding rules. We keep coming up with things that we can use the data to tell the user. But it's a never-ending path, and there's kind of endless combinations of issues and problems that users could be looking for. And often that's where we provide support and help. But with AI and passing it all this kind of information, we can now deal with multiple scenarios. Another example, when I showed you the dynamic widgets, when we gave it a problem, we told it we want to build an application with this and that and widgets and search filters. What we've done with dynamic widgets prior to AI is build multiple demonstrations. So with the product, we have instructions and objects to build different solutions, little ones and little demo examples, so that we hope that customers will kind of get the idea of all the things they could do based on these examples. But of course, there are thousands of use cases, and it's not always easy to extrapolate from the examples we've given to what the customer specifically wants to do. And with the AI, we can allow them to basically mount questions, and it can be interactive about what they're trying to do, follow-on questions, and have it give them the code snippets, the examples, and guidance on how to do that. And we don't have to build a million demonstrations.
Greg, do you mind if I just add something here?
Sure.
So the user experience challenge, like Greg is saying, is like, how do we find that right balance of, options to select in the UI in order to, enhance your question or your query. So we're still trying to figure that out, but just to kind of give context, when you typically just ask a question, we're sending in a bit of information about the CS app along with the query. With these buttons, so Analyze CS app, this actually processed a huge amount of information, because not only is the RB app analyzer in itself a large application with many, many, many components, this is one of those things where we are doing a specific action within our AI engine to send a lot of information about the app, each component within the app, analyze each component, analyze it against other components, and ask a lot of questions as part of that analysis to generate the response. So in some cases, the chat can be light and easy and get quick answers, but in something like Analyze CS app, we are doing a tremendous amount of processing behind the scenes to come up with what we think is a relatively succinct response.
Right. And part of this, as I mentioned, we can give it all the relationships of the nesting of containers, all the relationships of all the web report calls and sub web report calls. And just to let your imaginations run, this within the analyzer as well, we have the ability, for example, to look at all of the relationships with business workspace objects. There's not a lot populated in this particular system, but workspace types, templates, and business workspaces. I'll pick a slightly more populated system here. Users and groups. Within here, we can have it show, so if I mount a group like this, particular group and all of the sub-users, all of that kind of stuff, but it can now do analysis about groups and permissions and things like that. We have an audit. One simple audit we have is to look for circular group references built in, but there's any number of different things that AI could be asked to look for once it's given this kind of all this data and all these relationships. So that's just to give you kind of we have one of the things in the tool is a variety of different ways of looking at the system, different like perspectives with web reports, triggers. This is the business workspace one here again. So all of that, when you select these objects, we can give the AI all of these unique relationships. In here, I'm just gonna, we can see, as you know, business workspaces have a tremendous amount of interlinked objects, parent workspaces, child workspaces, and we're already generating all of that contextual information. So I'm going to drop out of this, leave you with that, and we're going to have Darren talk a little bit about some of the kind of next step types of things, a little bit about Aviator, and maybe Darren, you can also talk about some customer concerns, and obviously people are welcome to mount concerns or ask questions about it, but and any slides you need or want me to put up here, I can bring up.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Like customer concerns, bring them because we know there's a lot of concerns around AI, and that's where we've tried to build very strict walls. So for example, customers who are on a air-gapped content server instance that's not connected to the internet, we still have a solution. We still have a way to enable the same type of functionality using our AI models in those types of environments. Greg talked about in one of the slides the Wild West of the internet, and we're not relying on internet searches or anything, but we've built connectors that if if a user or if a customer wanted to, say, get additional context in their searches from the internet, GitHub, maybe their own repos, specific websites like Substack or whatever, we built in all the connectors to connect our AI engine to content server instances, and then we've created they're called tools. They're MCP tools that allow, like, we've created a lot of these pre-built functions that are ready to be used to connect Rave to even more external data sources if needed, but those aren't on by default. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's that creepy slide that we put together. It's like we uploaded our brains.
That is horrific.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, Rave, the AI engine is one of our Ravenblack products. The way that Greg has been demoing this, of course, is showing how Rave is embedded in other Ravenblack products. This is just another alternative way that we can interact with the engine. But what I wanted to kind of show here is, yeah, as Greg mentions, that symbiotic relationship even with Aviator. So, for example, even though I'm not in the context of content server right now, I can easily make a live connection to a content server instance. And it's the same engine behind the scenes. I got the same knowledge bases, the same type of conversation types. So what I can do is start my conversation, but say in this case, I wanted to connect to content server and ask Aviator a question. I want Aviator to get some of the information that it has access to so that we can build on top of it. So in this chat, you literally just have to start typing, hey, Rave, ask Aviator. And then as soon as we type that, the chat mode changes to what we call Raviator mode. So ask Aviator for a list, or, I'll say a timeline of reports for this case. Now, what am I talking about? So here, the chat is actually connecting to content server, and it's showing me a whole bunch of all the different types of workspaces that are Aviator enabled on this content server instance. And let me pick one that I know is a insurance claims. There's so many here. Who knows? We'll just pick anyone. So what we can do is ask Aviator, and then Aviator is going to go off, or sorry, Rave is going to go and ask Aviator for information about this workspace, bring it back into this chat. Now, we're using a demo server of Aviator, so sometimes it's kind of iffy. Yep, taking a little bit longer than usual. But in any case, what we can do is ask Aviator for the context that it's prepared, bring it back, and then build on top of that. So a common way that I've been using this for myself, for example, is say we're in the application analyzer and I want to start creating, so I have an empty folder and maybe I want to start creating a new dashboard of dynamic widgets. I can use the Aviator information if I wanted to, but I'm going to add a new web report and I'm going to call it user logins. So this will create for me a brand new blank web report. So if we look at it, the web report has very little information. So I can ask Rave, okay, let's go into dynamic widget mode and let's go into developer mode. Create a dynamic widget that shows user logins for the past, 30 days and a line graph made with D3, which is a visualization library of our choice. So we'll give this a minute, but we'll see what it comes back with. Now, we've built into this as well knowledge bases around things like live reports with content server schema. So it's actually quite good at suggesting SQL, so you can generate live reports for it and so on. So if we look at the response, it's given us the full code for a web report that we can then just start putting into a perspective through the perspective manager. If we look through it, it's generating some mock data for us to use, but it creates a placeholder for us when if I wanted to ask it to suggest some live report SQL for this, it will generate a SQL and then show me and tell me how to create the live report and then connect this to it. We have all the D3 code here for doing this. So what I can do is just copy and paste this now. Because I'm already in the context of a brand new web report, I can switch over to this tab and I'm just going to drop it in here and save it. And I can, from here, this is how I typically work. I have that conversation where I'll ask it for something, I'll see what it generates, go back to the chat, and then ask it to refine it, maybe add some information, maybe clarify some, assumptions that it made, and I can quickly generate a lot of, very useful, very accurate web report, dynamic widget, live report, all this type of code that's, otherwise would, take you a little bit of time to code it by hand.
I think you lopped off the comment then, but
Oh,
sorry, no worries.
yeah. What else here? Oh, so one other thing that I've been doing is when I've been testing our RBMass, our multi-agent scheduler, one of our test systems has 30 different scheduling agents in it with a lot of very different types of load heavy web reports, and we're trying to really test and get some good data from this. So we have a whole bunch of generated logs here. So, one of the things I could do, ideally, like I could just go into Ask Rave and say, look at this information or generate a visualization. But I mean, the other thing I could do is, start a new one of these chats, go into, I don't know, maybe architect mode. Um, let's add Robin. And I'll say, can you analyze this schedule data for me?
Analyze this.
Analyze this. Just literally just paste it in.
Sorry, it's a movie reference.
Yeah, it is. And I keep thinking that every time I say analyze this, I think that's quite funny.
So to be clear, where we're evolving to with the product is we would be just select one of these log files and it would automatically be submitted in the way that Darren is doing right now by pasting some of this canned data we're using for testing.
I'm actually going to switch the mode because now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get it to analyze this. I'm going to use general mode because one thing I didn't mention is if you start in general mode, we have a whole bunch of query mapping that will, if you're trying to build something versus analyze something or understand something, behind the scenes, it'll automatically switch to different conversation modes to make sure you're using the right appropriate one. So
we have about 4 minutes, Darren.
Yeah, this won't take that long.
It better not take 4 minutes.
Yeah, this will be worth it.
So while we're waiting, the last slide of this was sort of a roadmap, but I think I can kind of sum it up in saying that a lot of the basic features will be wired up pretty quickly. It's the work we put into fine-tuning it, adding and removing information will dictate how it evolves and how we release this stuff either to existing customers or new customers. So we can provide information by request on specific feature availability. Go ahead, Darren.
Yeah, no worries. So it was taking a little bit longer because it kind of switched over to developer mode to create didn't ask it to, but this is helpful. It actually created a web report that we could then copy and paste into Content Server to visualize that data. So it tells you here, I automatically switched to developer mode, but if you'd prefer your response in your original general mode, just type revert. So that's what I'm doing. So it's gone and analyzed the SQL all the JSON data. So what I can do is I can ask it things like, for the schedule information, schedule data, where were the delays? So I can just keep talking to this and I can say, like this blob of information that we started with, tell me information about it. Tell me what the problem areas were. Tell me where so here, based on the scheduled data, this is a list of all the scheduled runs that had any kind of delay more than a second, so that I could even just keep asking questions like, I don't know, what was the largest delay and why do you think that was? I'm kind of winging it here, but the point is, it has the data, it has the information, it has the context. We don't know the full extent of the questions that it can answer because, I mean, we don't require you to have very specific prompts or very specific, structures to your questions. So it's given us some, it's some of it's, well, let me read this. So I asked it to analyze it. I asked it for suggestions. Now it's giving us approaches to try to dig into this a little bit more. Then I can say, I know we have we have a specific subtag for doing timings. So I could say, show me how to implement the RB timer subtag to analyze this further. So yeah, from here, like this conversation could go into a million different ways. So it's trying its best to not only answer the question, but offer insights that might help you think of more questions. It's ready to generate code. It's ready to make those changes, add new things to content server for you, and so on.
And that brings us to the end of the presentation. We'd appreciate your comments and feedback. We'll show you some coordinates at the end of this video.